Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Big Fly Baseball Show. I am your host, Victor Rojas. This is the fourth installment since I brought the Big Fly Baseball Show back from the dead. We had this back in COVID in 2020. Myself and Joel Goldberg of the Kansas City Royals broadcast crew did something through the COVID season and then kind of just went away, but decided to bring it back a little over a month ago. And on the show, I kind of like to just kind of espouse, if you will, my thoughts on what's going on in the game of baseball from the previous week, and sometimes looking ahead. But that's generally what I do on this podcast. It's a one-man band. I'm still contemplating whether or not I bring on another host or start doing guests. I may do that at some point. Was able to finally get my first live game cast, if you will. That was last week when the Phillies were in Anaheim taking on the Angels, and did that for about an hour and 45 minutes thereabouts, a little play-by-play, and was joined by a couple of friends, Angels fans, Jeff Stoddart and Chuck Richter, who were kind enough to kind of ride along, if you will, during that live game cast. So I'm probably going to do more of those as the season progresses, but it's kind of what this show is all about. It's baseball centric. Sometimes talk about Major League Baseball, sometimes talk about the minors, sometimes about the amateur side of things. And I'm glad that you have decided to tune in, whether it's via the podcast. You could find us on any of the streaming services, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, iHeart, and the like. And you can also, if you want to watch the video instead and watch the show instead, you could do so on the YouTube channel, and that's at Big Fly Baseball Show. So again, I'm your host, Victor Rojas. So glad you could join me. This is typically one of those shows or podcasts that it's unscripted to a degree, meaning I don't have a teleprompter and I'm reading, but I do have some topics I want to talk about, but I don't have a timetable. Typically, I've gone about 30 minutes or thereabouts, and that way it's a quick hit and you get in and out of here. And you get a chance to enjoy the rest of your day. But that's the genesis of what the Big Fly Baseball Show is all about. Today's show, I cannot start without first wishing a happy anniversary to my bride, Kimberly Rojas. Today is our 24th wedding anniversary. We've been together a little over 26 years, and it's been a lot of fun. It really has. Got a chance. Like I said on last week's show, my daughter graduated from Grand Canyon University a little over a week ago. My son is just finishing up his freshman year in college. So it's been an exciting ride, and looking forward to another 24, 25, 30 years being married to Kim. But happy anniversary. And yes, I am sitting here in my office doing the podcast on my anniversary because why not? I am a baseball guy, and that's just what I happen to do. Well, anyway, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Major League Baseball. And typically, I like to start with what's the standings and how things are leading into this week. Not a whole lot of changes in the standings, if you will. Seattle still remains atop the American League West. They've got a half-game lead over the Rangers. Seattle is at 19-15. The Rangers at 19-16. Mariners will go play the Minnesota Twins beginning this week. The Rangers will take on the Oakland Athletics. Athletics, all of a sudden, playing a little bit more inspired baseball, if you will. 2.5 games back in the West. They're a game under 500. The Astros continue to boggle the mind. They are minus 20 in the run differential and find themselves in fourth place, 10 games under 500. As well as the Angels at 10 games under 500. Angels have not won a series in quite some time. They just lost 2 or 3 to the Cleveland Guardians over the weekend, and they are still on the road going to PNC Park, which happens to be one of my favorite ballparks in all of Major League Baseball, one of the worst broadcast booths in all of baseball, but one of the most beautiful ballparks. If you ever get the opportunity to visit PNC, absolutely do it. Oh, by the way, on this show, you will periodically get me going down a rabbit hole, just like I did on PNC Park. So PNC Park, go see it. That's where the Angels are going to be playing beginning tonight. So The American League East, the Orioles playing better baseball. They are 23-11. They've got a game advantage over the Yankees. Then you've got the Red Sox. Rays have played a little bit better. I'm not a huge City Connect uniform guy. I just think it's becoming overplayed, but I do like the fact that the Rays uniform is kind of cool. I just like the colors, the scheme. Uh, it's interesting because it's a City Connect uniform, and they play in St. Petersburg. So I don't know if they're trying to connect with St. Pete or if they're trying to connect with the whole Tampa Bay area. But it is a very cool uniform. But they are playing much better. Randy Arozarena needs to wake up and start producing. They're still minus 38 as far as the run differentials. That's huge. They need Randy and the rest of the crew to start banging it out. And the Blue Jays just continued to really kind of like the Astros. You thought that the Blue Jays going into the season were going to be a good offensive team. It would appear that they would be a good offensive team. That has not played out. They've struggled with men in scoring position. They're 3 games under 500, bringing up the rear in the American League East. They're 7.5 back. Oh, no, by the way, they got to take on one of the best teams in baseball in the Philadelphia Phillies beginning on Tuesday night. The Central, the Guardians, I just mentioned, they just took 2 of 3 from the Los Angeles Angels. They're 10 games over 500. The Twins, even with their win streak that just got snapped, they lost yesterday. They're 19-14, 2.5 back. Royals are 20-15, 2.5 back. Then you've got the Tigers, which I think are still an interesting, fun team to watch. And then the lowly White Sox, who have played a little bit better. They've won their last 2, but still just 8-26, 14 back in that Central Division. And they are pretty much toast, nail in the coffin, if you will. Moving over to the National League East is really it's the Philadelphia Phillies division right now. They have played, and I mentioned it last week. They were taking on the Angels. And last week's show, I was mentioning that they were getting ready to start a series against the Angels. They continue to play very good baseball. They did just lose Trey Turner to an injury, hamstring, and so we'll see how that plagues them. Turner is off to a terrific start. And offensively, especially him and Alec Boehm at third base. But we'll see how the Phillies able to manage it. They've got a pretty decent lineup. But Turner, the start that he had to his year was so good that he is a guy that will be missed. It'll be a difficult replacement for the Phillies, but somehow they continue to get it done. They've got terrific pitching. They've won 5 consecutive games. They've got the best record in baseball at 24-11. And they lead, dare I say, the Atlanta Braves by 2.5 games. And I'll touch on that in just a second. Braves had a tough series on the West Coast with the Dodgers, and they will take on the Boston Red Sox beginning tomorrow night. Braves are still a good team, obviously. This is still one of the teams to pick to click, if you will, in baseball, but they are 20-12, 2.5 back of the Phillies. Then you got the Nationals, Mets, 2 games under, and then the Marlins. We'll touch on the Marlins' god-awful situation. They're 10-26 on the year, bringing up the rear in the East. The Central has the Brewers and the Cubs tied atop the division, 20-13 and 21-14 respectively, Brewers and Cubs. And Brewers have lost 2 in a row. Cubs have won 2 in a row. These 2 teams should just meet all the time because it just seems like it's a terrific rivalry, which I think has just become even more enhanced with Craig Counsell having shifted gears from the Brewers over to the Cubs this past offseason. I still say that the best response, even though I like Pat Murphy and what he brings to the table as the skipper of the Brewers, it would have been awesome if the Brewers had just hired David Ross and it's kind of flip-flop managers and continue that rivalry. But they are still a fun team to watch. Both teams are fun to watch right now, and that series between those two is going to be electric all season long. So it'll be fun in the National League Central. The Reds, I still don't know how they are 2 games under 500 with how putrid their offense is. But that's how the Central is playing out right now. 2 games under 500. The Pirates are 3 games under 500 at 16-19. They're 5 back. And then the Cardinals, they, like the Reds on the offensive side, just have not been able to get it done. They're 15-19, 5.5 back in the Central. In the National League West, as we wrap up the standings at the start of this week, the Dodgers are the cream of the crop in that Western Division, 10 games over 500 at 23-13. They have themselves a 5.5 game advantage over the San Diego Padres. Padres got a little bit better this past week with the addition of Luis Arias from the Miami Marlins. And like I said, I'll touch on that here in just a second. Dodgers have won 4 consecutive games. That includes the sweep of the Atlanta Braves, which I'll touch on. And they're plus 63 on the offensive side, which is no surprise considering what everyone expected on the offensive side. Diamondbacks just, from the injury standpoint, from the offensive standpoint, haven't been able to get it going. They're 5 under 500 at 7.5 games back. Giants also 5 under. I don't think there was a whole lot of expectation for the Giants. And then the lowly Rockies, that is just an absolute mess of a franchise right now. They just have no direction. The base running blunders, the fundamentals, the mistakes, the lack of pitching, the lack of hitting. They find themselves at 8-26, 14 back. At 8-26, them and the White Sox have the worst record in baseball. That is a 235 winning percentage, and they are minus 77 in the run differential. So that's where we stand right now as far as the standings in baseball. The Dodgers will continue to feel good about themselves because they get the Marlins coming into town, and they can continue to boat race them. The Dodgers have 8 of their last 10. Speaking of the Dodgers, they continued to flex their muscle over the weekend. It was a great, when you look at that series between the Braves and the Dodgers, you're talking about the two better teams. Not taking anything away from the Philadelphia Phillies and what they're doing, but everyone talked about the Dodgers and the Braves, and because of what they've done over the last several years, how good that team is for the Atlanta Braves, the expectation of what the Dodgers have from an offensive standpoint, especially with all of the injuries that they have to their arms and to their rotation and bullpen, they continue to flex their muscle. They outplayed the Braves all weekend long, and because of that, the Braves, that is, find themselves 2.5 games back. The Dodgers offensively just continue to get the job done. You mentioned the pitching injuries, I should say, that the Dodgers have had with the guys that they have on the injured list. This past weekend, they ran out Gavin Stone, Tyler Glasnow, and James Paxton, and they were able to take care of the Atlanta Braves. The offense for the Dodgers, when you start looking at the overall numbers, is just absolutely ridiculous. Ohtani, Betts, and Smith, those three respectively hitting 364, 352, 347, and they have combined for 20 home runs and 78 runs batted in, basically through 5 weeks of the season. And then you start adding, like guys like Andy Pages, the Cuban-born outfielder, who has contributed a 319 average with 4 home runs, 12 RBIs in just 17 games. And you wonder why the Dodgers continue to play at such a high level. They are able not only to go out and spend the money that they can spend on the free agent side of things, but also continue from a player development standpoint, be able to bring guys up and have them contribute at the major league level. So it's just, kudos to what the Dodgers are doing. I mean, you can't hide from it. It is what it is. They are a very, very good, very deep offensive unit that I think will continue and will be able to sustain. And if they get some of those arms back, watch out. I still like the Braves. I still like what they're capable of doing. But the Phillies are fun to watch. But I think right now it's a Dodgers kind of world at this point. That's my feeling. But they currently have the 4th best record, tied with the Yankees in Major League Baseball. Phillies, Orioles, Guardians. Then you got the Dodgers and the Yankees. Speaking of the Yankees, the one thing that it continues to stand out, and I got to take a sip of water just because when you're running a one-man band, you get parched, and you got to quench the vocal cords on occasion. But speaking of the Yankees, Aaron Judge uh, has not been Aaron Judge like. He is at the start of this week still just hitting 220. Now, don't get me wrong. He is still a very, very impactful guy in the middle of that order. There's just no doubt about it. The way you approach him, the way you attack him. This past weekend, which was curious, got rung up on a called strike three that he didn't care for. It seemed to be borderline, but he experienced his first ejection of his career, which, you see the big man and he's such a gentle giant. It's weird to see him. I mean, he got tossed very quickly, which I thought was kind of bush league. But that being said, you wonder if there is some frustration that perhaps is starting to mount for Aaron Judge. Now, the flip side of that is that they still have the fourth best record, tied with the fourth best record with the Dodgers in Major League Baseball, that being the Yankees. And they're doing that because they've got guys that are stepping in. Juan Soto, to me, has just been, if from the time he came up with Washington to the time he went to San Diego, and I don't think that he truly lived up to his potential in San Diego, as good a player as he is. There's certain guys that live for the limelight, that rise to the occasion. And Juan Soto and the marriage with the New York Yankees just seems to be that perfect fit. I just, what he's been able to do from an offensive standpoint, and doing it consistently and in the clutch has been fun to watch. There's no doubt he's already endeared himself to the Yankee faithful. Now the question becomes, what will, if anything, the Yankees will offer him as you get closer and closer to free agency? Because this guy is going to get paid. And I know you can't truly comp him to Ohtani because of what Shohei has accomplished on both sides, offensively and also from the pitching side, because he's an ace when he's healthy, pitching wise. But he's going to become very, very close. I mean, he is going to get very close to that money. And I hope the Yankees do it, just because I like what, not that I'm not a Yankee fan per se, but I think it's good to have players like that want to be there, that rise to the occasion, that make it interesting, that are vibrant like Juan is. And I think it'd just be a perfect match. Right now, going into this week, Soto at 316 has 7 doubles, 1 triple, 8 home runs, and 28 RBIs, 980 OPS, right? The beauty of that is people talk about Yankee Stadium and the short porch, and right, it's reverse splits for him. He's only hit 267 with 3 home runs, 16 RBIs at Yankee Stadium. On the road, 355 with 5 home runs and 12 runs batted in. The amazing thing about, talk about rising to the occasion, is what he's done with men in scoring position. He's hit 440 with an OPS over 1,300. And so with Judge struggling the way he has been struggling to start this year, that's one of the big reasons why the Yankees have been able to sustain offensively, is because Juan has just been so good and so consistent, especially when he's needed to step up in those crucial situations. That's why I think there are individuals that can handle the pressure of playing in a place like New York and wearing the pinstripes and the expectation on a daily basis. There's guys that wilt to it. And Soto is one of those guys. I just think he's the perfect fit as far as the pinstripes in New York are concerned. So we'll see how that plays out the rest of the season. We'll see if Judge turns it around. I mean, you would think with a guy with his pedigree and his experience that he would be able to turn it around. And if he does that, watch out for the Yankees. The Orioles are still a very good team. I still think the Orioles are the team to beat because of the pitching and the offense and the young players that they have. But the Yankees are going to be fun to watch. I mentioned the Marlins and their their debacle, if you will, especially with the trade that happened. Marlins going into this week are 10-26 on the year. And look, it's been kind of a weird off-season beginning of the season for the Fish. There's just no doubt about it. A couple of weeks ago, the general manager, Peter Bendix, who was hired this past offseason to run the baseball ops side for the Marlins, was asked when the team was 6-24 about the ball club. And Peter's quote was, "It was too early to have an evaluation on the season." This was after a 6-24 season. I don't know about you. You start 6-24, I have a pretty damn good idea what my evaluation is going to be. It's not too early. It's on time. That was on April 30th that he stated that. Fast forward to May 3rd, which was Friday. This team was starting a series against the Oakland Athletics, and Bendix trades Luis Arias, a two-time batting champion, to the San Diego Padres for 4 minor leaguers, plus paying all of Arias' salary minus the major league minimum to the Padres. I don't understand it. Friday night, by the way, the Marlins got pounded by the A's 20-3 after that trade. And Arias debuted on Saturday for the Padres, and all he did was go 4 for 4 for the Pods. Padres, by the way, got better with Arias in that lineup. I think that's going to be a fun team to watch as far as the Padres, if they can get it going from the pitching side. So back to the Marlins. Keep in mind, this is a team that went to the playoffs last year and whose manager was the National League Manager of the Year, Skip Schumacher. So here's the timeline so far for this regime, okay? They somehow managed to get to the playoffs through a stacked National League East last year. They decide to hire Peter Bendix to oversee baseball ops, which forced Kim Ng, the previous GM, to leave the organization. They spend no money in the offseason to build on what was just done in 2023, to kind of build on that momentum. They tell the reigning National League Manager of the Year that we're voiding the option year in year 2025, thus making him a free agent after this year. And then they come out of the gates, completely poo-poo the bed. They trade their best player, and now we'll be left to wonder why nobody's going to any games in Miami at Lone Depot Park. It's just crazy to think how things have played out. And now, look, I get it that you want to put your stamp on things, but this is an organization that's kind of going through a retool, rebuild again. It's the second time in this ownership group's history already. And I don't think there's an appetite for that in South Florida. I mean, you were barely hanging by a thread to begin with the fan base in South Florida. And now you pull this garbage? Good luck going forward. I just don't see how it's possible that you can somehow figure out, some sort of magic formula to consistently get the fan base to buy in and be able to kind of fill that ballpark. Outside of having the Cubs come in or the Yankees come in, the Phillies come in, where people flock down to South Florida, Phillies fans, Yankees fans, Cubs fans to flock down there to fill the ballpark. I'm talking about with Marlins fans. I just don't see it happening anytime soon. And that's going to be, it'll be an interesting thing to watch over the year and next couple of years as to really, truly the apathy that has already set in South Florida amongst Marlins fans. All right, lastly on the Big Fly Baseball Show, I told you it's quick and sweet. Usually it's about 30 minutes or thereabouts. If not, sometimes I go into diatribes, and this might be a diatribe for me. It's a little bit closer to home because it has to do with the Angels, and it has to do with Mike Trout, whom I love as a human being. I love his family. Trouty's always been good to me. Great guy, busts his tail. I think he's a Hall of Famer. There's no doubt about it. But last week, news came out that there was a tear in his meniscus, left knee, and that he would have to have surgery and be out for a considerable amount of time. It's not a season-ending, at least as of right now. It's not a season-ending injury, but the expectation is he's going to miss some time, which obviously is not good for Mike. It's not good for the Angels, especially with the struggles they've already had to start the year with Rendon out and so on and so forth. It just continues to mount for the Angels. What my beef is going back to spring training when during the first full squad workouts in February, Trout was interviewed. Okay. And he emphatically stated then that he did not want to be traded. And I'm going to quote what he said back in February. Quote, I think the biggest thing right now is the easy way out would be asking for a trade. There might be a time, maybe. I haven't really thought about this. When I signed that contract, I'm loyal and want to win a championship here. I think the overall picture of winning a championship or getting to the playoffs here is a bigger satisfaction than bailing and taking the easy way out, close quote. That was Mike Trout in February when he talked to the media. And there was an article, multiple articles about that in February. Trouty starts the season. He goes off. He's doing all right. Batting average, not so much, but he's leading the major leagues in home runs with 10. When the news came out that he felt a little twinge during a game, he had some swelling overnight, woke up the next morning and said, hey, I think I need to get this checked out. And it turns out he's got an issue with the meniscus in his left knee. Procedure was performed last Friday. Like I said, it's not supposed to be season ending. But it is the fourth consecutive year that Trouty will miss some time to deal with a significant injury. Look, he's 32 years of age. The body tends to break down. He's a guy that has always played at 100%, meaning max effort, never gives up, never gives in. And bodies tend to break down at different stages. And he's built like a brick house. So it's like, it's going to happen. It's unfortunate, but it's going to happen. Last week after the injury news, another article came out in The Athletic, and it was written by Ken Rosenthal. I've known Kenny for a long time, worked with him at MLB Network. I enjoy his work. I have no qualms with Kenny whatsoever. I think he's a pro. But I never understood, to this point, I have not understood the reason for the article. Maybe it's clickbait, maybe it's whatever. I don't care. I'm not going to judge. The headline of that article in The Athletic was Mr. Angel, ? Mike Trout's chance of ever escaping the franchise now seems even less likely. That was the headline of the article in The Athletic. Now I can't imagine that Kenny was the one that authored that beauty. But I don't understand the purpose of the headline or the article, other than clickbait and to really piss off Angel fans or Mike Trout fans. The man said not but 2 months ago that he's not interested in asking for a trade. He used the word loyal a number of times, and yet it doesn't seem to be good enough for the so-called national media to accept. I don't get it. I'm at that point where I'm not sure I understand the motivation to constantly push the narrative of getting any player to a playoff contender or city. Who cares? I mean, I've been around this game my entire life. I've never once yearned for a particular player to be playing elsewhere just so I can watch him in the playoffs or so that he can experience the playoffs. Not once, not one time. I simply just don't care about it that much. I don't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything to me. If it has nothing to do with my team, why should I care? That's how I've always looked at it. It certainly isn't to grow the game, because that's hilarious. You can't. Wishing a player goes to a different team so you could see them in playoff isn't about growing the game. They throw that garbage out all the time. MLB is the most regionalized sport of the big four. There's just no doubt about it. If you're that jacked up about seeing a particular superstar, then hop on a regional broadcast for that team and soak it all in. That is, of course, if you're not subject to MLB's archaic blackout rules and or one of your regional sports networks isn't in bankruptcy court. Moreover, the incessant focus on star players switching teams overlooks the beauty of team loyalty, which is what Trout has talked about. Just think about those narratives that unfold with each club and each player when you talk about loyalty, the history and culture. Why can't we just appreciate the game for what it is, rather than constantly, wanting these players to go elsewhere? I just don't get it. And look, in an era that is often going to prioritize immediate success and glamour and enduring legacies, a player's preference for loyalty should never be dismissed as him being soft or indicative of fear of failure. He doesn't want to go here, there. Loyalty should be revered, man, not ridiculed. So I don't understand why we continue to have to deal with these type of narratives, if you will, that constantly get pushed, especially when it comes to Mike Trout. The guy throughout his career has continuously said the exact same thing. Then why continue to hammer home the point? I'm not sure what the reasoning is behind it. And it just is mind-boggling to me that we continue to have to read stuff like this, that especially when the player has already said that he's not going to ask for a trade. He's not going to go anywhere. He has no desire to, at least not now. And to say that because of an injury that it'll be even that much more difficult to trade him, well, no shit. Really? You got a guy that doesn't want to be traded, plus an injury. Yeah, it makes it a little bit more difficult. So what's the problem with him just staying there, see if they can win something in Southern California? I'm not saying they're going to. It's going to be difficult for the Angels, especially where they're at right now. But he's happy where he's at. Celebrate that. There's nothing wrong with it. The guy hasn't mailed in anything. And he won't mail anything, whether it's in Southern California or with any other team. I say continue to celebrate those moments as opposed to just continuing to bash the guy for not wanting to trade or wanting to play in Philadelphia or play in New York or wherever the case may be. It's getting so old, and I can't believe we continue to see this garbage constantly really just spewed out just for clicks. At the end of the day, that's what it all boils down to. So there's my rant, there's my diatribe, and that's the end of our Big Fly Baseball show, the 4th episode of the 2024 season. I hope I didn't continue to talk, and there's certain things that I get passionate about, and I apologize for that. But I just, like I said, it's mind-boggling to me, and I guess I'll never figure it out. I'm trying to stay as PG as possible through all of it. It's hard for me sometimes, having grown up in a clubhouse, because just of my nature of just speaking my truth. But it is it's getting old. It really is, and I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said before, you can listen to our podcast or my podcast on any of the platforms currently, whether it's Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon, or watch on the YouTube channel at Big Fly Baseball Show. I'd love to know what you think. Feel free to subscribe and comment on the show, and let you know when that next live game cast that I'll be doing that should be coming up maybe this week. All right. Thanks for watching. I'm Victor Rojas, and I hope everyone has a wonderful week. Take care.